Question 1. Analysis of the process for gathering applicant data for the Ali Institute of Education entrance exam reveals a need to assess potential risks to data privacy and security. Which of the following approaches best mitigates these risks while ensuring compliance with institutional guidelines? Option A. Accessing applicant databases using publicly available credentials found through online searches. Option B. Utilizing official, secure channels for data acquisition, ensuring all necessary consents are obtained and data is handled by authorized personnel only. Option C. Collecting applicant information through unencrypted email attachments from external sources. Option D. Requesting applicant data directly from admissions staff through informal communication methods to expedite the process. Correct answer is B. Utilizing official, secure channels for data acquisition, ensuring all necessary consents are obtained and data is handled by authorized personnel only. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data. The Ali Institute of Education entrance exam, like many educational institutions, operates under strict guidelines regarding the handling of applicant information. A key aspect of risk assessment in this context involves identifying potential threats to data integrity and confidentiality, and then implementing appropriate controls. The challenge lies in determining the most effective and compliant method to gather necessary information without compromising privacy or security. The correct approach involves a systematic and authorized process for data acquisition. This means utilizing established channels and protocols that are designed to be secure and compliant with any relevant data protection policies or regulations that the Ali Institute of Education adheres to. Such a process would typically involve seeking official consent, using secure data transfer methods, and ensuring that only authorized personnel have access to the information. This aligns with the ethical imperative to respect privacy and the regulatory requirement to safeguard personal data, preventing unauthorized access or disclosure. An incorrect approach would be to bypass official channels or to use unauthorized methods to obtain information. For instance, attempting to access applicant data through informal networks or by exploiting system vulnerabilities would be a direct violation of data protection principles and potentially specific institutional policies. This not only poses a significant security risk, but also breaches the trust placed in the institution by applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to collect information without proper consent, which is a fundamental ethical and often legal requirement. This disregards the applicant's right to control their personal information and exposes the institution to reputational damage and potential legal repercussions. Professionals tasked with such responsibilities should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes compliance and ethical conduct. This involves first understanding the specific data protection policies and any applicable regulations governing educational institutions. Then, they should identify the legitimate purpose for data collection and assess the associated risks. The next step is to design and implement a data collection strategy that is both effective in meeting the stated purpose and minimizes risks to privacy and security. This often involves consulting with relevant departments, such as IT security and legal counsel, to ensure all actions are within the approved framework. Finally, continuous monitoring and review of data handling practices are essential to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 2. The audit findings indicate potential inconsistencies in the application of revenue recognition policies, leading to questions about the accuracy of reported revenue for the past fiscal year. The audit team has identified specific transactions that appear to be recognized prematurely. What is the most appropriate next step for the audit team to take? Option A. Conduct further audit procedures to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence to determine the nature and extent of any potential misstatements and their impact on the financial statements. Option B. Focus on other areas of the audit that are less complex and defer a detailed investigation of these revenue recognition issues until the next audit cycle. Option C. Accept management's initial explanations for the inconsistencies and proceed with finalizing the audit report. Option D. Immediately inform the audit committee and management that fraud is suspected and recommend a forensic investigation. The correct answer is A. Conduct further audit procedures to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence to determine the nature and extent of any potential misstatements and their impact on the financial statements. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for timely and accurate financial reporting with the potential for misinterpretation or manipulation of data. The audit findings suggest a potential weakness in internal controls related to revenue recognition, which could have material implications for the financial statements. Careful judgment is required to determine the appropriate course of action that upholds professional integrity and regulatory compliance without causing undue alarm or disruption. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation of the identified discrepancies. This means gathering sufficient appropriate audit evidence to understand the root cause of the issues, assess their impact on the financial statements, and determine if any misstatements have occurred. This aligns with the fundamental principles of auditing, which mandate professional skepticism and due professional care. Specifically, it adheres to the ethical standards and auditing guidelines that require auditors to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement, whether caused by error or fraud. This approach ensures that any identified issues are addressed systematically and that the audit opinion is based on a robust understanding of the facts. An approach that involves immediately concluding that fraud has occurred without sufficient evidence is professionally unacceptable. This prematurely jumps to a serious conclusion, potentially damaging reputations and leading to unnecessary actions. It violates the principle of professional skepticism, which demands a questioning mind and a critical assessment of audit evidence, rather than an assumption of guilt. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the audit findings due to time constraints or pressure from management. This directly contravenes the auditor's responsibility to conduct a thorough audit and report findings accurately. It represents a failure to exercise due professional care and could lead to the issuance of an inaccurate audit report, violating auditing standards and potentially regulatory requirements for financial reporting accuracy. Finally, an approach that involves solely relying on management's explanations without independent verification is also professionally unsound. While management's input is valuable, auditors must maintain independence and exercise professional skepticism. Unverified explanations can mask underlying issues and lead to an incomplete or misleading audit. This approach fails to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence, a cornerstone of the auditing process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging and documenting all audit findings. 2. Applying professional skepticism to all information received. 3. Planning and executing procedures to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence to investigate the findings. 4. Evaluating the evidence obtained to determine the nature, cause, and extent of any potential misstatements. 5. Communicating findings and proposed adjustments to management and those charged with governance. 6. Forming an opinion on the financial statements based on the evidence gathered and in accordance with applicable auditing standards. Question 3. Process analysis reveals that a faculty member requests access to the anonymized demographic data of applicants who have already submitted their applications for the upcoming entrance exam, stating it is for a research project on applicant trends. What is the most appropriate risk assessment approach to manage this request? Option A. Share the anonymized demographic data with the faculty member and a few other select faculty members who have expressed interest in similar research. Option B. Deny the request outright without further investigation, citing general data privacy concerns. Option C. Formally document the request, assess the sensitivity and relevance of the anonymized data, consult institutional policies on data access and research, and provide a reasoned response based on these factors. Option D. Immediately provide the anonymized demographic data to the faculty member, as it is anonymized and for research purposes. The correct answer is C. Formally document the request, assess the sensitivity and relevance of the anonymized data, consult institutional policies on data access and research, and provide a reasoned response based on these factors. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data and ensure fair assessment processes. The Ali Institute of Education entrance exam, like any reputable educational institution, operates under guidelines that prioritize fairness, integrity, and data privacy. Mismanaging this information could lead to accusations of bias, compromise the validity of the entrance exam, and violate student privacy regulations. The correct approach involves a structured, transparent, and compliant method for handling the request. This approach prioritizes adherence to established protocols for information dissemination and risk assessment. Specifically, it involves a formal request process that allows for a thorough review of the information's sensitivity, its relevance to the exam's integrity, and the potential risks associated with its disclosure. This aligns with the general principles of good governance and data protection expected of educational bodies, ensuring that any information shared is done so appropriately and with due consideration for all stakeholders. The regulatory framework governing such institutions typically mandates clear procedures for handling sensitive information and requests for access, emphasizing the need for a documented and justified decision-making process. An incorrect approach that involves immediate, informal disclosure without proper vetting poses significant regulatory and ethical risks. This failure stems from bypassing established protocols designed to safeguard information and maintain the integrity of the assessment process. Such an action could be seen as a breach of confidentiality and could potentially provide an unfair advantage to certain candidates, undermining the principle of equal opportunity. Another incorrect approach, which is to completely deny the request without any consideration or explanation, is also professionally unsound. While it might seem to err on the side of caution, it fails to acknowledge the potential legitimate need for information and can lead to perceptions of opacity or unresponsiveness, potentially damaging the institution's reputation. A third incorrect approach, which is to share the information selectively with a limited group without a clear, documented rationale, is highly problematic. This selective disclosure can easily be perceived as biased or preferential, leading to accusations of unfairness and potentially violating data privacy principles if the information is not anonymized or if its sharing is not authorized. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic evaluation of the request against institutional policies, ethical guidelines, and any applicable privacy laws. This includes identifying the nature of the information requested, its potential impact on the fairness of the exam, and the legitimacy of the requester's need. If there is any ambiguity or potential for harm, the default should be to consult with relevant internal stakeholders, such as the admissions committee or legal counsel, before making a decision. Transparency in the process, even if the request is ultimately denied, is crucial for maintaining trust and upholding the institution's integrity. Question 4. Research into the Ali Institute of Education entrance exam procedures reveals a candidate has submitted a request for a modified examination format due to a self-reported learning difficulty, providing a letter from a family friend who is a counselor but not a licensed medical professional. According to the Ali Institute of Education's official entrance examination guidelines, what is the most appropriate course of action for the examination committee? Option A. Allow the candidate to use their own assistive technology during the exam, as this is a common accommodation. Option B. Grant the requested modification based on the candidate's statement and the provided letter to ensure inclusivity. Option C. Proceed with the examination as scheduled and address the accommodation request after the results are released. Option D. Inform the candidate that the provided documentation does not meet the requirements outlined in the Ali Institute of Education's entrance examination guidelines for special accommodations, and request official documentation from a licensed medical or psychological professional. Correct answer is B. Grant the requested modification based on the candidate's statement and the provided letter to ensure inclusivity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for accommodation and the institution's established policies and procedures for assessing such needs. The Ali Institute of Education entrance exam, like many academic institutions, operates under a framework of regulations and guidelines designed to ensure fairness, academic integrity, and equitable treatment of all applicants. Navigating requests for special accommodations requires a delicate balance, demanding adherence to these established rules while also demonstrating empathy and a commitment to supporting students within the defined parameters. The challenge lies in upholding the integrity of the entrance examination process without unfairly disadvantaging a candidate who may genuinely require support. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented review of the student's request, strictly adhering to the Ali Institute of Education's established policy on special accommodations for entrance examinations. This policy, which is presumed to be in place and publicly accessible, would outline the specific types of accommodations available, the documentation required to support such requests, e.g., medical certificates, psychological evaluations from recognized professionals, and the timeline for submission and review. A professional decision would be made based on whether the submitted documentation meets the criteria outlined in the policy and whether the requested accommodation is reasonable and does not compromise the validity or fairness of the examination. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant as it ensures consistent application of rules, prevents potential bias, and maintains the integrity of the assessment process for all candidates. An incorrect approach would be to grant the accommodation based solely on the student's verbal assertion, or a cursory review of a non-standard or incomplete document. This fails to adhere to the established regulatory framework of the Ali Institute of Education, potentially opening the door to subjective decision-making and unfair advantages for some candidates over others. It also risks undermining the credibility of the examination process. Another incorrect approach would be to outright deny the request without a proper review process, even if the student provides some form of supporting documentation. This could be seen as a failure to reasonably consider a candidate's needs and could potentially violate institutional policies or ethical guidelines related to inclusivity and support for students with documented needs. A third incorrect approach would be to seek external advice from individuals not authorized by the Institute's policy to make such decisions, or to deviate from the prescribed documentation requirements without a clear, documented rationale that aligns with the spirit of the Institute's regulations. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the relevant institutional policies and regulatory guidelines. When faced with a request for accommodation, a professional should first identify the specific policy governing such requests. They should then meticulously review the submitted documentation against the criteria outlined in that policy. If the documentation is incomplete or unclear, a professional should follow the established procedure for requesting further information or clarification from the applicant. Decisions should be based on objective evidence and adherence to policy, with a clear, documented rationale for approval or denial. If there is ambiguity, consulting with the designated administrative or academic body responsible for overseeing entrance examinations at the Ali Institute of Education would be the appropriate next step, rather than making an ad hoc decision. Question 5. The performance metrics show a consistent decline in student engagement and pass rates across several core subjects over the last 2 academic years. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial step for the Ali Institute of Education's administration to address this trend? Option A. Issue a formal directive to all faculty members in the affected departments, outlining the performance decline and demanding immediate improvement in teaching methodologies. Option B. Convene a meeting with department heads to present the aggregated performance data, discuss potential contributing factors, and collaboratively brainstorm strategies for faculty development and curriculum enhancement. Option C. Initiate an independent review of all faculty members in the underperforming departments to assess individual teaching effectiveness and identify potential disciplinary actions. Option D. Disseminate the raw performance data to the entire faculty body without initial interpretation or proposed solutions, encouraging self-reflection. The correct answer is B. Convene a meeting with department heads to present the aggregated performance data, discuss potential contributing factors, and collaboratively brainstorm strategies for faculty development and curriculum enhancement. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need to acknowledge and address underperformance with the imperative to maintain a supportive and developmental environment for students, as stipulated by the Ali Institute of Education's guiding principles for student progress and faculty responsibility. The core difficulty lies in identifying the most constructive and ethically sound method to communicate these findings to the faculty, ensuring it leads to positive change without causing undue demoralization or reputational damage to the institute. The correct approach involves a structured, data-informed, and collaborative discussion focused on identifying systemic issues and developing targeted interventions. This aligns with the Ali Institute's commitment to continuous improvement and student success. By presenting the performance metrics in a context that emphasizes support and professional development, the Institute fosters an environment where faculty feel empowered to address challenges constructively. This approach respects the professional autonomy of the faculty while ensuring accountability for student outcomes, adhering to the implicit ethical obligation to provide the best possible educational experience. An incorrect approach would be to publicly shame or single out underperforming departments or faculty members. This would violate the principle of professional respect and could lead to defensiveness, decreased morale, and a reluctance to engage in open dialogue about performance issues. It undermines the collaborative spirit essential for educational improvement and could be seen as a failure to uphold the Institute's duty of care towards its staff. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the performance metrics altogether. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to data-driven decision-making and student welfare. It suggests an unwillingness to confront potential problems, which can lead to the perpetuation of underperformance and a decline in the overall quality of education provided by the Institute. This passive stance fails to meet the Institute's responsibility to monitor and enhance its educational offerings. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on punitive measures without offering support or resources for improvement would also be professionally unsound. While accountability is important, education is fundamentally a developmental process. Without providing avenues for faculty to improve their teaching methods or address underlying issues, punitive actions are unlikely to yield sustainable positive results and can create a climate of fear rather than growth. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Data collection and analysis. Objectively gather and analyze relevant performance data. 2. Contextualization. Understand the factors that might be contributing to the observed performance. 3. Collaborative discussion. Engage relevant stakeholders, e.g., department heads, faculty, in a constructive dialogue. 4. Solution-oriented planning. Develop actionable strategies and provide necessary support for improvement. 5. Monitoring and feedback. Continuously track progress and provide ongoing feedback. Question 6. Comparative studies suggest that applicants to prestigious educational institutions often face dilemmas regarding the disclosure of personal circumstances that might influence their application. Considering the ethical framework expected of students at the Ali Institute of Education, which of the following approaches best demonstrates responsible and principled conduct when an applicant realizes a minor, unintentional error in a previously submitted document that could be misinterpreted? Option A. Ask a friend who has already been admitted to the institute for advice on how to handle the situation informally. Option B. Ignore the error, hoping it will not be noticed, as it was unintentional and minor. Option C. Immediately contact the admissions office to explain the error, provide the correct information, and apologize for any inconvenience caused. Option D. Attempt to subtly correct the error in a subsequent submission without explicitly mentioning the previous mistake. The correct answer is C. Immediately contact the admissions office to explain the error, provide the correct information, and apologize for any inconvenience caused. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate not only academic aptitude, but also an understanding of ethical conduct and institutional values, which are crucial for success within the Ali Institute of Education. The challenge lies in identifying the approach that best reflects integrity and responsible engagement with the application process, aligning with the Institute's likely expectations for its students. The correct approach involves a direct and honest communication of the applicant's situation, acknowledging the potential impact on their application while seeking guidance. This is ethically sound because it prioritizes transparency and integrity, fundamental principles in academic and professional settings. By proactively disclosing the circumstances, the applicant demonstrates maturity and respect for the admissions process. This aligns with the implicit ethical guidelines of any educational institution that values honesty and expects applicants to present themselves truthfully. It also allows the admissions committee to make an informed decision based on complete information, fostering a fair evaluation. An incorrect approach that involves omitting the information is ethically flawed because it constitutes a misrepresentation of facts. This lack of transparency can be interpreted as dishonesty, undermining the trust between the applicant and the institution. Such an omission could lead to the application being invalidated if discovered later, resulting in severe consequences for the applicant's future academic pursuits. Another incorrect approach, which is to exaggerate or fabricate details to present a more favorable, albeit untrue, picture, is fundamentally unethical and fraudulent. This not only violates the principles of honesty, but also demonstrates a lack of integrity, which is a critical trait for any aspiring student. This approach would likely lead to immediate rejection and potential blacklisting from future admissions. A further incorrect approach, which is to seek advice from unauthorized individuals or to attempt to manipulate the process through unofficial channels, is also professionally unsound. It bypasses the established procedures and can be seen as an attempt to gain an unfair advantage, which is contrary to the spirit of fair competition and merit-based admissions. This can also lead to serious repercussions if discovered. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to honesty and integrity. Applicants should always strive to present accurate information, and when faced with challenging circumstances that might affect their application, should proactively and transparently communicate with the relevant authorities of the institution. Seeking clarification through official channels and adhering to established procedures are paramount. Question 7. System analysis indicates that an admissions officer at the Ali Institute of Education, who is responsible for overseeing the entrance examination review process, discovers that their close relative is among the applicants. The officer has access to preliminary scoring data and is aware of the general difficulty level of certain sections of the exam. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct course of action for the admissions officer to take? Option A. Proceed with reviewing the application as usual, assuming their professional integrity will prevent any bias from influencing their judgment. Option B. Discreetly use their knowledge of the exam scoring to provide subtle guidance to their relative on how to improve their performance without directly altering any scores. Option C. Share general insights about the exam structure and common challenges with their relative, framing it as helpful advice for future applicants. Option D. Immediately recuse themselves from any involvement in the review and scoring of their relative's application, and inform their supervisor of the potential conflict of interest, ensuring all established protocols for handling such situations are followed. Correct answer is D. Immediately recuse themselves from any involvement in the review and scoring of their relative's application, and inform their supervisor of the potential conflict of interest, ensuring all established protocols for handling such situations are followed. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in educational institutions, where admissions processes must adhere to established policies and ethical standards to ensure fairness and integrity. The Ali Institute of Education entrance exam, like any reputable academic institution, operates under a framework of rules designed to prevent bias and uphold meritocracy. The challenge lies in navigating situations where personal relationships might influence professional judgment, potentially compromising the impartiality required in admissions. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the Ali Institute's published admission criteria and procedures, without allowing any personal connection to sway the evaluation process. This upholds the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants and maintains the credibility of the entrance examination. Specifically, the Ali Institute's guidelines, as per its charter and examination regulations, mandate that all admissions decisions are based solely on academic merit, as demonstrated through the entrance exam and other stipulated academic qualifications. Any deviation, such as offering preferential treatment or access to confidential information, would violate these foundational principles and potentially lead to accusations of favoritism or corruption, undermining the institution's reputation and the fairness of its selection process. An incorrect approach would be to leverage the personal relationship to gain an unfair advantage for the applicant. This could manifest as providing advance notice of exam content, altering scoring criteria, or advocating for the applicant outside the established review process. Such actions directly contravene the Ali Institute's commitment to a transparent and merit-based admission system. Ethically, it represents a breach of professional conduct by exploiting a position of influence for personal gain, which is unacceptable in any academic or professional setting. Furthermore, it violates the implicit trust placed in admissions officers to act impartially. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the applicant entirely due to the personal connection, without following the standard evaluation procedure. While this might seem like an attempt to avoid bias, it still fails to uphold the professional duty to evaluate all applicants fairly according to the established criteria. The applicant is still entitled to a proper assessment based on their qualifications, and simply disregarding them is not a professional or ethical resolution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the institution's admission policies and ethical codes. When faced with a potential conflict of interest, such as a personal connection to an applicant, the professional must first identify this conflict. The next step is to consult the relevant policies and guidelines to determine the appropriate course of action. If the policy is unclear or the conflict is significant, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the designated ethics committee is crucial. The paramount principle is to ensure that all decisions are made impartially, transparently, and in strict accordance with established rules and ethical standards, prioritizing the integrity of the institution and the fairness of the process above all else. Question 8. Regulatory review indicates that an applicant for the Ali Institute of Education entrance exam discovers that one of the examiners on the admissions panel is a distant relative. The applicant is concerned about potential bias, either for or against them, and how this might impact the fairness of their application review. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct course of action for the applicant to take? Option A. Proceed with the exam and hope that the examiner's relationship does not influence their evaluation, assuming the examiner will act professionally. Option B. Withdraw the application to avoid any appearance of impropriety, even if the relationship is distant and unlikely to cause actual bias. Option C. Discreetly inquire with the relative about the exam process and any potential advantages or disadvantages their relationship might present. Option D. Immediately inform the Ali Institute of Education's admissions office or the designated admissions committee chair about the familial relationship and request guidance on how to proceed to ensure impartiality. The correct answer is D. Immediately inform the Ali Institute of Education's admissions office or the designated admissions committee chair about the familial relationship and request guidance on how to proceed to ensure impartiality. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of ethical conduct and adherence to institutional guidelines, which are paramount in any educational setting, especially one preparing students for professional careers. The Ali Institute of Education, like many institutions, has established rules to ensure fairness and integrity in its admissions process. Navigating potential conflicts of interest or perceived impropriety requires careful judgment and a commitment to upholding these standards. The correct approach involves proactively disclosing the relationship and seeking guidance from the appropriate authority within the Ali Institute of Education. This demonstrates transparency, integrity, and a commitment to following established procedures. Specifically, it aligns with the ethical principle of avoiding conflicts of interest and ensuring that admissions decisions are made impartially, free from undue influence. By informing the admissions committee or designated official, the applicant allows the institution to implement measures to maintain fairness, such as recusal of the relative from the decision-making process or a thorough review by an independent party. This proactive disclosure is crucial for upholding the reputation and integrity of the admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to remain silent about the familial relationship. This failure to disclose creates a significant ethical breach. It suggests an attempt to conceal a potential conflict of interest, which undermines trust and fairness. Such an omission could lead to accusations of favoritism or bias, jeopardizing the integrity of the admissions process and the applicant's own standing. Another incorrect approach would be to discuss the application with the relative in a manner that could influence the decision. This goes beyond mere disclosure and actively involves the relative in a way that could be perceived as seeking an unfair advantage. It violates the principle of impartial evaluation and could be seen as an attempt to manipulate the outcome, leading to severe ethical and procedural consequences. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of institutional policies regarding admissions and conflicts of interest. When faced with a potential conflict, the professional standard is to err on the side of transparency. This involves identifying the potential conflict, understanding the relevant rules and guidelines, and proactively communicating the situation to the appropriate authority within the institution to seek clarification and ensure adherence to ethical standards. Question 9. Consider a scenario where an applicant for the Ali Institute of Education entrance exam realizes a few days before the exam that they have not adequately prepared for a specific section due to unforeseen personal circumstances. They are aware of a former student who has access to past exam papers and is willing to share them for a fee. What is the most ethically appropriate course of action for the applicant? Option A. Accept the offer of past exam papers and study them intensely to improve their score in the challenging section. Option B. Attempt to contact an examiner directly to seek specific questions or topics that are likely to appear in the exam. Option C. Politely decline the offer of past exam papers and focus on reviewing available study materials, while also considering reaching out to the admissions office to inquire about any available supplementary resources or clarification on the syllabus. Option D. Contact the former student and negotiate a higher fee for the past exam papers, ensuring they are the most recent versions. The correct answer is C. Politely decline the offer of past exam papers and focus on reviewing available study materials, while also considering reaching out to the admissions office to inquire about any available supplementary resources or clarification on the syllabus. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate not only academic aptitude, but also an understanding of ethical conduct and the principles of fair assessment, which are foundational to the integrity of educational institutions like the Ali Institute of Education. The pressure to perform well can tempt individuals to consider shortcuts, but adherence to ethical guidelines is paramount. The correct approach involves the applicant honestly acknowledging their lack of preparation and seeking legitimate avenues for improvement, such as requesting additional study materials or clarifying doubts with the admissions office. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty and integrity, which are implicitly expected of all prospective students and are crucial for maintaining a fair and transparent admissions process. The Ali Institute of Education, like any reputable institution, would uphold these values. An incorrect approach would be to attempt to gain an unfair advantage by seeking unauthorized assistance or by misrepresenting one's knowledge. This directly violates the principle of academic integrity and honesty. Such actions undermine the fairness of the entrance examination, devalue the achievements of other candidates who have prepared diligently, and would be viewed as a serious ethical lapse by the Ali Institute of Education. Furthermore, attempting to bribe or unduly influence an examiner is a severe breach of ethical conduct and potentially illegal, leading to immediate disqualification and reputational damage. Professionals should approach such situations by prioritizing honesty and integrity. The decision-making process should involve 1. Recognizing the ethical implications of the situation. 2. Identifying the core values at stake: honesty, fairness, integrity. 3. Evaluating available options against these values and institutional expectations. 4. Choosing the course of action that upholds these values, even if it presents a personal challenge. In this context, seeking legitimate support or admitting a lack of preparedness is the ethically sound and professionally responsible choice. Question 10. The monitoring system demonstrates a statistically significant deviation in response patterns between a group of students during a recent examination, raising concerns about potential academic misconduct. Which of the following represents the most appropriate immediate action for the Ali Institute of Education's examination board? Option A. Disregard the monitoring system's flags as potential system errors and proceed with grading as usual. Option B. Publicly announce that irregularities have been detected and that an investigation is underway. Option C. Initiate a confidential review of the flagged data by the designated Academic Integrity Committee to assess the nature and extent of the deviation according to established institutional policies. Option D. Immediately issue warnings to all students in the flagged group regarding potential academic dishonesty. The correct answer is C. Initiate a confidential review of the flagged data by the designated Academic Integrity Committee to assess the nature and extent of the deviation according to established institutional policies. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge in maintaining academic integrity and ensuring fair evaluation processes within the Ali Institute of Education. The monitoring system's demonstration of potential irregularities requires a prompt and ethical response to uphold the institution's standards and the trust of its students. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for thorough investigation with the principles of fairness and due process for all students. The correct approach involves a systematic and confidential review of the flagged data by an authorized academic integrity committee. This committee, operating under the Ali Institute of Education's established academic misconduct policies, would be responsible for objectively assessing the evidence. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with best practices in academic governance by ensuring that any allegations of academic dishonesty are handled through a formal, impartial process. It respects the rights of students by not making premature judgments and allows for a thorough investigation before any disciplinary action is considered. This adheres to the principles of natural justice and institutional policy. An incorrect approach would be to immediately suspend or penalize students based solely on the monitoring system's flags, without a proper investigation. This fails to uphold the presumption of innocence and bypasses the established procedures for addressing academic misconduct, potentially leading to unjust outcomes and damaging the institution's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the flags altogether, which would be a dereliction of duty and would undermine the integrity of the examination process, potentially allowing academic dishonesty to proliferate. Finally, publicly discussing the flagged incidents before a formal investigation is complete would violate student privacy and could lead to reputational damage for both the students and the institution. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to institutional policies, ethical conduct, and due process. This involves 1. Recognizing the potential issue and its implications for academic integrity. 2. Consulting relevant institutional policies and guidelines regarding academic misconduct and data monitoring. 3. Initiating a formal, confidential investigation through the designated channels. 4. Ensuring all parties involved are treated fairly and have the opportunity to respond to any findings. 5. Maintaining confidentiality throughout the process. Question 11. The investigation demonstrates that a student at the Ali Institute of Education has lodged a formal complaint regarding a perceived error in the marking of their final examination paper, claiming a significant discrepancy in the allocated marks compared to their understanding of the marking scheme. The student is requesting an immediate re-examination of the paper. Which of the following actions best reflects the appropriate professional response within the regulatory framework of the Ali Institute of Education? Option A. Grant the student an immediate re-examination of the paper to resolve the complaint swiftly and avoid potential disruption. Option B. Advise the student's immediate instructor to informally review the paper and make a decision on whether a re-examination is warranted. Option C. Initiate a formal review of the examination paper according to the Ali Institute of Education's established academic grievance and appeals policy, involving an independent assessor if necessary, and communicate the findings and decision to the student. Option D. Inform the student that examination marks are final and no further review or re-examination is possible, as per institute policy. Correct answer is C. Initiate a formal review of the examination paper according to the Ali Institute of Education's established academic grievance and appeals policy, involving an independent assessor if necessary, and communicate the findings and decision to the student. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived academic grievance and the established procedures for addressing such concerns within the Ali Institute of Education. The pressure to resolve the issue quickly, coupled with the potential for reputational damage to the institute, necessitates a careful and principled approach. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the need for fairness to the student with the adherence to institutional policies and the integrity of the examination process. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of the student's complaint, strictly adhering to the Ali Institute of Education's established grievance and appeals policy. This policy, as outlined in the Institute's academic regulations, mandates a structured process for investigating academic disputes, including evidence gathering, consultation with relevant faculty, and a formal decision-making body. This approach is correct because it upholds the principles of due process and fairness for the student, ensuring their concerns are heard and addressed systematically. It also protects the integrity of the examination system by ensuring that any review is conducted according to predefined, transparent procedures, thereby preventing arbitrary decisions and maintaining academic standards. This aligns with the ethical obligation of educational institutions to provide a fair and equitable learning environment. An incorrect approach would be to immediately grant the student a re-examination without a formal review. This fails to uphold the established grievance policy, bypassing the necessary investigative steps. Ethically, this sets a dangerous precedent, suggesting that complaints can be resolved through immediate concessions rather than through established procedures, potentially undermining the credibility of the examination system and encouraging frivolous appeals. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's concerns outright without any investigation, citing the finality of examination results. This violates the ethical principle of fairness and the student's right to have their grievances addressed. It also fails to acknowledge that errors, though rare, can occur, and a complete lack of review mechanism is professionally unacceptable and can lead to significant student dissatisfaction and potential reputational damage to the institute. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate the decision solely to the student's immediate instructor without involving a broader review committee or adhering to the formal appeals process. While the instructor has subject matter expertise, this approach lacks the impartiality and oversight required by institutional policy. It risks bias and does not provide the student with the assurance of an independent and objective assessment, which is a cornerstone of fair academic dispute resolution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging the student's concern promptly and empathetically. 2. Identifying and consulting the relevant institutional policies and procedures for academic grievances. 3. Initiating the formal investigation process as stipulated by the policy, ensuring all parties are informed and involved. 4. Gathering all necessary evidence and information objectively. 5. Making a decision based on the evidence and policy, ensuring it is well documented and communicated clearly. 6. Providing avenues for further appeal if the policy allows. Question 12. The analysis reveals that an applicant to the Ali Institute of Education demonstrates strong academic potential, but has a slightly lower score in a specific subject area compared to the stated minimum requirement. However, the applicant has a compelling personal statement detailing significant extracurricular achievements directly relevant to their intended course of study, and has received strong recommendations highlighting their dedication and potential for success. Considering the Ali Institute of Education's commitment to fostering well-rounded individuals and its published admissions policy that allows for consideration of a broader range of applicant attributes, which approach best aligns with professional best practices for admissions? Option A. Defer the decision indefinitely until further clarification on the minimum subject score can be obtained, leaving the applicant in uncertainty. Option B. Admit the applicant based on their strong personal statement and extracurricular achievements, overriding the minimum subject score requirement without further consultation. Option C. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's profile, weighing their academic scores, personal statement, extracurricular achievements, and recommendations against the institute's stated admissions criteria and mission, and document the decision-making process. Option D. Strictly adhere to the minimum subject score, rejecting the applicant due to the single deficiency, regardless of other strengths. The correct answer is D. Strictly adhere to the minimum subject score, rejecting the applicant due to the single deficiency, regardless of other strengths. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in educational institutions where admissions processes must balance academic merit with broader institutional goals and fairness. The Ali Institute of Education, like any reputable institution, operates under a framework of regulations and ethical guidelines designed to ensure transparency, equity, and adherence to its stated mission. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying these guidelines when faced with borderline cases or situations that test the boundaries of established criteria. Careful judgment is required to uphold the integrity of the admissions process and maintain public trust. The correct approach involves a holistic review that considers the applicant's potential contribution to the institute beyond purely academic scores, while strictly adhering to the Ali Institute of Education's published admissions policy and any relevant provincial or national educational regulations governing admissions. This approach acknowledges that, while academic performance is a primary indicator, other factors such as extracurricular involvement, personal statements, and demonstrated passion for the chosen field can be valid considerations if explicitly permitted by the Institute's policy. The justification for this approach is rooted in the principle of fairness and the institute's right to define its own admission criteria within legal and ethical boundaries. It ensures that decisions are not arbitrary, but are based on a predefined, transparent framework. An incorrect approach that prioritizes solely academic scores without considering other factors, if the institute's policy allows for a broader assessment, would be a failure to adhere to the institute's own published admissions criteria. This could lead to overlooking promising candidates who might bring diverse strengths to the student body. Another incorrect approach, which involves admitting a candidate based on personal connections or influence outside of the established merit-based system, represents a significant ethical failure and a violation of principles of fairness and equal opportunity. Such actions undermine the credibility of the admissions process and can lead to legal challenges if they contravene anti-discrimination laws or institutional policies. Furthermore, an approach that deviates from the published admissions policy without proper authorization or a clear, documented rationale would also be professionally unsound, as it introduces subjectivity and potential bias. Professionals involved in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the Ali Institute of Education's admissions policy and all applicable regulations. This framework should include a clear process for evaluating applications against these criteria, a mechanism for discussing borderline cases among a committee, and a requirement for documenting the rationale behind all admission decisions, especially those that involve discretionary elements. Transparency and consistency are paramount. Question 13. Governance review demonstrates that a member of the Ali Institute of Education's admissions committee has a close personal relationship with a candidate applying for admission. The committee member is aware of this relationship and its potential to influence their judgment. What is the most appropriate course of action for this committee member to ensure the integrity of the admissions process? Option A. Disclose the relationship to the committee and proceed with evaluating the applicant. Option B. Recuse themselves from any discussion or decision-making regarding the applicant. Option C. Discuss the applicant's qualifications with another committee member and ask them to make the final recommendation. Option D. Evaluate the applicant based on merit, believing their objectivity will not be compromised. The correct answer is B. Recuse themselves from any discussion or decision-making regarding the applicant. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential for conflicts of interest and the need to uphold the integrity of the Ali Institute of Education's admissions process. The admissions committee member's personal relationship with an applicant creates a situation where objective evaluation could be compromised, impacting fairness and trust in the institution's selection criteria. Careful judgment is required to navigate this ethical dilemma and ensure compliance with established institutional policies and principles of academic integrity. The correct approach involves recusing oneself from the decision-making process concerning the applicant. This upholds best professional practice by prioritizing impartiality and avoiding any perception of bias. Specifically, institutional guidelines for admissions committees, which are designed to ensure a fair and equitable selection process, would mandate recusal in such circumstances. This action directly addresses the conflict of interest, safeguarding the integrity of the admissions committee's deliberations and the overall reputation of the Ali Institute of Education. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with evaluating the applicant without disclosing the relationship. This fails to adhere to ethical standards of transparency and impartiality, potentially leading to accusations of favoritism and undermining the credibility of the admissions process. Another incorrect approach would be to disclose the relationship, but still participate in the discussion and voting. While disclosure is a step, continued participation in the face of a clear conflict of interest still compromises objectivity and violates the spirit of fair evaluation. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate the evaluation to another committee member without proper oversight or a clear process for ensuring fairness. This could lead to inconsistent application of standards and does not fully address the initial conflict of interest. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of institutional policies on conflicts of interest and ethical conduct. When a potential conflict arises, the professional should first identify the nature of the conflict and its potential impact. Then, they should consult relevant policies and seek guidance from a supervisor or designated ethics officer if necessary. The primary goal should always be to maintain objectivity, fairness, and the integrity of the process, even if it means stepping aside from a decision. Question 14. To address the challenge of a student performing poorly due to a documented family emergency, what is the most appropriate initial step for the academic department at the Ali Institute of Education? Option A. Schedule a meeting with the student to discuss their situation, review relevant institutional policies on academic support and special considerations, and explore potential avenues for assistance. Option B. Delegate the decision-making process to the student's direct academic advisor without further departmental review. Option C. Immediately inform the student that academic performance standards must be met regardless of personal circumstances. Option D. Advise the student to withdraw from the current academic term to avoid further academic penalties. The correct answer is C. Immediately inform the student that academic performance standards must be met regardless of personal circumstances. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in educational institutions where a student's academic performance is significantly impacted by personal circumstances. The challenge lies in balancing the need for fair and consistent academic evaluation with the ethical obligation to support students facing genuine difficulties. A hasty decision based solely on immediate performance could lead to an unfair outcome for the student and potentially damage the institution's reputation for compassion and fairness. The correct approach involves a thorough, empathetic, and process-driven evaluation. This entails gathering comprehensive information about the student's situation, consulting relevant institutional policies on academic support and special considerations, and engaging in a dialogue with the student to understand their needs and potential solutions. This approach aligns with the ethical principles of fairness, student welfare, and due process, which are implicitly expected in any reputable educational institution like the Ali Institute of Education. It prioritizes understanding and support while maintaining academic integrity. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the student's request or to make a decision without adequate information. For instance, simply stating that academic standards must be upheld without investigating the student's circumstances fails to acknowledge the potential for extenuating factors and disregards the principle of student support. Another incorrect approach would be to grant an immediate, unqualified concession without a clear policy or a structured process for such situations, which could set a precedent for arbitrary decision-making and undermine the fairness of academic assessments for all students. A third incorrect approach might involve delegating the decision solely to a junior administrator without proper oversight or consideration of the broader institutional policies and ethical implications. Professionals in educational settings should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes information gathering, policy adherence, and ethical considerations. This involves 1. Active listening and empathy to understand the student's situation. 2. Consulting and applying relevant institutional policies and guidelines. 3. Seeking appropriate consultation with academic advisors, counselors, or administrative bodies as needed. 4. Documenting the process and the rationale for the decision. 5. Communicating the decision and any available support mechanisms clearly to the student. Question 15. The review process indicates that a candidate for the Ali Institute of Education entrance exam has been observed attempting to gather information about the specific topics and potential question formats that might appear on the exam from unofficial online forums, and by asking former students about their experiences. This candidate believes that by understanding these elements, they can better prepare and perform well. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and ethically sound approach for this candidate in relation to the Ali Institute of Education entrance exam? Option A. Focus preparation on the official syllabus and recommended study materials provided by the Ali Institute of Education, and engage in practice tests that simulate the exam format without seeking specific pre-exam content. Option B. Attempt to contact current students or faculty members of the Ali Institute of Education to inquire about the exam's difficulty and specific subject areas that are heavily weighted. Option C. Actively participate in online discussions and seek advice from former students to gain insights into the types of questions and topics that are likely to be covered, believing this is a strategic advantage. Option D. Rely on general knowledge and common exam preparation strategies, without consulting any specific information related to the Ali Institute of Education entrance exam. The correct answer is A. Focus preparation on the official syllabus and recommended study materials provided by the Ali Institute of Education, and engage in practice tests that simulate the exam format without seeking specific pre-exam content. Explanation. The review process indicates a need to assess understanding of ethical conduct and academic integrity within the context of university entrance examinations, specifically as governed by the Ali Institute of Education's established guidelines. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to discern between acceptable and unacceptable methods of seeking information or assistance during a high-stakes assessment, where any deviation from prescribed rules can lead to disqualification. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of fairness and equal opportunity for all candidates. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the examination's stated rules and guidelines, which prohibit any form of external assistance or unauthorized materials. This aligns with the core ethical principles of academic integrity, ensuring that all candidates are evaluated on their own merit and knowledge. The Ali Institute of Education, like most academic institutions, mandates that entrance exams are individual assessments, and any attempt to circumvent this by seeking pre-exam information beyond what is officially provided or permitted would be a violation of their examination regulations and the fundamental ethical standard of honesty. An incorrect approach of attempting to obtain specific questions or answers prior to the exam is a direct violation of academic integrity and the examination's rules. This constitutes academic dishonesty, undermining the fairness of the assessment process and devaluing the achievements of honest candidates. Another incorrect approach of discussing the exam content with other candidates after completion, if it involves sharing specific questions or answers in a way that could benefit future candidates, also breaches the spirit of fair assessment and could be considered a form of collusion or aiding dishonesty. A third incorrect approach of seeking clarification on exam topics from unauthorized sources during the exam itself, if not explicitly permitted by the examination invigilator or instructions, would also be a breach of examination protocol. Professionals should approach such situations by prioritizing adherence to all stated rules and ethical guidelines. The decision-making process should involve a clear understanding of the examination's objectives, the rules governing conduct, and the potential consequences of non-compliance. When in doubt, candidates should seek clarification from official examination authorities rather than resorting to unauthorized methods. The overarching principle is to ensure a fair and equitable assessment environment for all. Question 16. What factors determine the appropriate course of action when an applicant's family expresses concerns about their child's chances of admission to the Ali Institute of Education entrance exam and offers to provide additional, non-standard documentation to support their application? Option A. The perceived social standing and influence of the applicant's family within the community. Option B. The personal rapport established between the admissions officer and the applicant's family during informal conversations. Option C. The applicant's expressed desire to attend the Ali Institute of Education, regardless of their academic qualifications. Option D. The extent to which the additional documentation directly addresses the established admission criteria and can be objectively verified according to Ali Institute of Education's admission guidelines. The correct answer is D. The extent to which the additional documentation directly addresses the established admission criteria and can be objectively verified according to Ali Institute of Education's admission guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing academic integrity with the need to support a student's potential. The Ali Institute of Education entrance exam framework emphasizes fair and objective assessment. The core professional challenge lies in identifying and mitigating any undue influence that could compromise the fairness of the entrance examination process, ensuring all candidates are evaluated on their own merit. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review of the student's application and academic record, seeking objective evidence of their capabilities and potential, while strictly adhering to the Ali Institute's established admission policies and procedures. This approach upholds the principle of merit-based selection, which is fundamental to maintaining the academic standards and reputation of the institution. It ensures that decisions are based on verifiable criteria and are defensible under the institute's regulations. An incorrect approach would be to rely on personal assurances or informal discussions with the student's family without seeking corroborating evidence. This fails to adhere to the institute's established admission criteria and introduces subjectivity, potentially leading to biased decision-making. It also bypasses the formal review process, undermining the integrity of the admission system. Another incorrect approach would be to grant preferential treatment or make an exception to the standard admission requirements based solely on the family's perceived influence or the student's perceived future potential without concrete evidence. This violates the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants and can lead to accusations of favoritism, damaging the institute's credibility and potentially admitting students who do not meet the required academic threshold. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic evaluation of all applications against predefined, objective criteria. When faced with a situation that appears to warrant special consideration, professionals must first consult the relevant institutional policies and guidelines. If the situation falls outside standard procedures, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the admissions committee is crucial. The decision must be documented, transparent, and justifiable based on the institute's regulations and ethical principles of fairness and equity. Question 17. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new digital learning platform could significantly reduce administrative overhead and potentially improve student access to course materials, but it requires a substantial upfront investment and ongoing technical support. Which approach best balances financial prudence with the educational mission of the Ali Institute of Education? Option A. Defer the decision to invest in a new platform, continuing with the current system to avoid any immediate expenditure, and revisit the possibility in a future academic year. Option B. Select the platform with the lowest initial purchase price, assuming that administrative savings will offset future support costs. Option C. Implement the most feature-rich platform available, prioritizing comprehensive functionality over immediate cost savings, with a plan to seek external grants for ongoing support. Option D. Conduct a thorough evaluation of several platforms, considering not only initial and ongoing costs, but also the platform's pedagogical effectiveness, ease of use for students and faculty, scalability, and alignment with the institute's long-term educational goals, alongside a detailed risk assessment and a plan for faculty training and student support. Correct answer is B. Select the platform with the lowest initial purchase price, assuming that administrative savings will offset future support costs. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in educational institutions where resource allocation must be balanced against the potential benefits of new initiatives. The Ali Institute of Education, like any academic body, operates under a framework of regulations and ethical guidelines that govern its decision-making processes, particularly concerning the adoption of new programs or technologies. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that decisions are not solely driven by immediate financial considerations, but also by long-term educational impact, student welfare, and adherence to institutional policies and any relevant governing educational standards. A rigorous evaluation process is paramount to avoid potential pitfalls such as investing in unproven technologies, neglecting essential student support services, or creating an inequitable learning environment. The correct approach involves a comprehensive evaluation that extends beyond a simple cost-benefit calculation. It requires considering the qualitative benefits, such as enhanced learning outcomes, improved student engagement, and alignment with the institute's mission and strategic goals. Furthermore, it necessitates a thorough risk assessment, including the potential for technological obsolescence, the need for ongoing training and support, and the impact on existing infrastructure and personnel. This approach aligns with best practices in educational management, which emphasize evidence-based decision-making, stakeholder consultation, and a commitment to continuous improvement in the quality of education provided. Adherence to the Ali Institute of Education's internal policies on procurement, program development, and technology adoption, as well as any overarching educational accreditation standards, would be critical. An incorrect approach would be to solely prioritize the option with the lowest immediate cost, even if it offers fewer long-term benefits or introduces significant risks. This overlooks the potential for higher initial investment to yield greater returns in terms of educational quality and student success. Another incorrect approach would be to adopt a new technology without adequate consideration for faculty training and student support, leading to underutilization and dissatisfaction. This fails to acknowledge the holistic requirements for successful implementation of any educational initiative. Finally, choosing an option based on anecdotal evidence or peer recommendations, without independent verification of its effectiveness and suitability for the Ali Institute of Education's specific context, would be professionally unsound, potentially leading to wasted resources and a failure to meet educational objectives. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve establishing clear criteria for evaluation that reflect the Institute's strategic priorities and educational mission. This includes defining measurable outcomes, considering stakeholder input, students, faculty, administration, conducting thorough due diligence on potential solutions, and performing a robust risk analysis. A phased implementation or pilot program can also be a prudent step to mitigate risks and gather real-world data before full commitment. Question 18. Market research demonstrates that prospective students often struggle with understanding the nuances of academic integrity. Considering the stringent standards of the Ali Institute of Education, which of the following best describes the applicant's understanding of plagiarism and its avoidance? Option A. It is acceptable to use information from various sources as long as the wording is substantially altered, even if the original idea is retained. Option B. If an idea is widely known or discussed, it is not necessary to cite its origin, as it has become common knowledge. Option C. Plagiarism is the act of presenting another's work or ideas as one's own without proper acknowledgement, and it is crucial to cite all sources to maintain academic honesty. Option D. The primary concern with plagiarism is the potential for academic penalties, and as long as one does not copy verbatim, the risk is minimal. The correct answer is C. Plagiarism is the act of presenting another's work or ideas as one's own without proper acknowledgement, and it is crucial to cite all sources to maintain academic honesty. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge, because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the core principles of academic integrity and ethical conduct expected by an educational institution like the Ali Institute of Education. The challenge lies in distinguishing between legitimate academic inquiry and plagiarism, a critical skill for any aspiring student. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the applicant's response reflects an awareness of the institute's standards and the broader academic community's expectations regarding originality and proper attribution. The correct approach involves clearly articulating the definition of plagiarism and its implications within an academic context, emphasizing the importance of citing sources. This approach is right because it directly addresses the fundamental ethical and regulatory framework governing academic work. The Ali Institute of Education, like all reputable educational bodies, adheres to principles that prohibit the unauthorized use of others' work. Failing to cite sources or presenting someone else's ideas as one's own is a direct violation of these principles, which are often codified in academic integrity policies. Proper attribution is not merely a formality. It is an ethical imperative that respects intellectual property and allows for the verification of information. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the difficulty of remembering every detail from a source fails to grasp the essence of academic integrity. While memory limitations are real, the ethical obligation is to acknowledge the origin of ideas and information, not to reproduce them verbatim without attribution. This approach is ethically flawed because it excuses a lack of diligence in citation, which is a core requirement for academic honesty. Another incorrect approach that suggests that if an idea is common knowledge, it does not need citation, is also problematic. While common knowledge generally does not require citation, the line between common knowledge and specific information or unique arguments can be blurry. An applicant should err on the side of caution and cite when in doubt, demonstrating a commitment to thoroughness and transparency. This approach risks misinterpreting the scope of common knowledge and can lead to unintentional plagiarism. A third incorrect approach that proposes that if the wording is changed significantly, citation is unnecessary, misunderstands the concept of plagiarism. Plagiarism extends beyond verbatim copying to include paraphrasing without attribution. Changing a few words does not make an idea or structure of argument one's own. This approach is ethically unsound, as it attempts to circumvent the spirit of academic honesty by superficial alteration, rather than genuine original thought or proper acknowledgement. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a commitment to understanding and upholding academic integrity policies. Applicants should always strive for originality, meticulously cite all sources of information and ideas, and seek clarification if unsure about citation requirements. The guiding principle should be transparency and respect for intellectual property. Question 19. The control framework reveals that a student preparing for the Ali Institute of Education entrance exam has approached you, a designated mentor, seeking direct answers to a set of practice questions they are struggling with. The student expresses significant anxiety about their performance and believes that obtaining the correct answers will boost their confidence and improve their chances of success. What is the most appropriate course of action to uphold the integrity of the Ali Institute of Education's admission process and foster genuine learning? Option A. Immediately report the student to the admissions committee for attempting to solicit unauthorized assistance. Option B. Provide the student with the correct answers to the practice questions, explaining that your goal is to help them succeed in the exam. Option C. Ignore the student's request and continue with your scheduled duties, assuming they will find another way to prepare. Option D. Advise the student that you cannot provide direct answers, but can guide them on how to approach similar problems independently and direct them to official study resources provided by the Ali Institute of Education. The correct answer is B. Provide the student with the correct answers to the practice questions, explaining that your goal is to help them succeed in the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the ethical imperative to uphold academic integrity. The Ali Institute of Education, like any reputable institution, has established guidelines to ensure a fair and honest learning environment. The challenge lies in navigating a situation where a student might be tempted to circumvent the established learning process, requiring the professional to act in accordance with the institute's regulations and ethical standards. The correct approach involves a commitment to the principles of academic honesty and the established procedures of the Ali Institute of Education. This means recognizing that providing unauthorized assistance, even with good intentions, undermines the learning process and violates the institute's rules. The professional must uphold the integrity of the assessment process by adhering strictly to the guidelines set forth by the Ali Institute of Education regarding academic conduct and student support. This includes understanding the boundaries of permissible assistance and ensuring that all actions are transparent and in line with institutional policy. An incorrect approach that involves providing the student with direct answers or solutions to the practice questions would be a failure to uphold academic integrity. This action directly contravenes the purpose of practice assessments, which are designed to help students identify their own areas of weakness and develop their understanding independently. It also violates the implicit trust placed in the professional to act as a facilitator of learning, not a provider of shortcuts. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the student's request and offering no guidance, fails to address the student's underlying need for support, even if the request itself is problematic. While not as egregious as providing answers, it misses an opportunity to guide the student towards appropriate resources and reinforce the importance of independent learning within the institute's framework. A third incorrect approach, such as reporting the student to the authorities without first attempting to understand the situation or offer appropriate guidance, could be seen as overly punitive and lacking in professional discretion. While academic misconduct must be addressed, a graduated response that prioritizes education and adherence to policy is often more effective. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulations and ethical guidelines of the Ali Institute of Education. 2. Assessing the student's request in light of these regulations. 3. Prioritizing academic integrity and the student's genuine learning. 4. Communicating clearly with the student about the boundaries of acceptable assistance and the importance of independent effort. 5. Directing the student to appropriate, authorized resources for help. Question 20. Governance review demonstrates that a significant philanthropic donation is being offered to the Ali Institute of Education, with the explicit understanding that the donor expects preferential consideration for their nominated candidates in the upcoming admissions cycle. The institute is facing budget constraints, and this donation would significantly alleviate financial pressures. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for the Ali Institute of Education to take in this situation? Option A. Reject the donation outright due to the potential for compromising the integrity of the admissions process, even if it means continuing to face financial difficulties. Option B. Establish a clear, documented policy for evaluating and managing donor-influenced admissions, ensuring that any nominated candidates are assessed strictly on their academic merit and suitability for the institute, with the final decision resting solely with the admissions committee, and transparently communicate the institute's policy on such donations to the donor. Option C. Accept the donation and allow the donor to have significant input into the admissions committee's decisions for their nominated candidates, ensuring their preferences are largely accommodated. Option D. Accept the donation immediately to address the budget constraints and instruct the admissions committee to give the donors nominated candidates a slight advantage in the selection process to foster a positive relationship. The correct answer is B. Establish a clear, documented policy for evaluating and managing donor-influenced admissions, ensuring that any nominated candidates are assessed strictly on their academic merit and suitability for the institute, with the final decision resting solely with the admissions committee, and transparently communicate the institute's policy on such donations to the donor. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate need for resources and the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and fairness in the admissions process. The pressure to secure funding can cloud judgment, leading to potential compromises that undermine the institution's values and reputation. Careful consideration of ethical principles and institutional policies is paramount. The correct approach involves a transparent and structured process for evaluating the donation's impact on admissions decisions. This means establishing clear criteria for accepting or rejecting such donations, ensuring that any potential influence is identified and mitigated, and that the final admissions decisions remain based on merit and suitability for the Ali Institute of Education. This aligns with principles of good governance, academic integrity, and fairness, as expected in any reputable educational institution. The Ali Institute of Education, like any academic body, is expected to uphold standards that prevent undue influence on its admissions processes, ensuring that all applicants are assessed equitably. An incorrect approach would be to accept the donation without any review of its potential impact on admissions, thereby creating an implicit bias or preferential treatment for the donor's nominees. This violates the principle of fairness and could lead to the admission of less qualified candidates, damaging the academic standing of the institute. Another incorrect approach would be to reject the donation outright without exploring potential avenues for its ethical acceptance, such as ensuring the donation is unrestricted or earmarked for non-admissions-related purposes. This might forego valuable resources that could benefit the institute and its students. Finally, accepting the donation and then secretly admitting the donor's nominees without a transparent process would be a severe breach of ethical conduct and institutional policy, undermining trust and accountability. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical considerations and institutional policies. This involves 1. Identifying the ethical dilemma and potential conflicts of interest. 2. Consulting relevant institutional policies, codes of conduct, and any applicable regulatory guidelines for educational institutions. 3. Seeking advice from relevant stakeholders, such as the ethics committee, legal counsel, or senior leadership. 4. Evaluating all available options against ethical principles and institutional values. 5. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind the chosen course of action. 6. Implementing the chosen approach with transparency and accountability.